Good morning. This is a second of our Facebook devotions on the book of Acts. I introduced that yesterday to you, and it's also going on the website now. Actually, I have to confess, this is my second time filming this video. I put it on Facebook Live this morning, but forgot to save it. I need it saved so I could upload it to YouTube to put on the website. So if you're seeing it and it's a little different and you've seen it on Facebook and now the website, that's why it's a little bit different. Acts chapter 2. I introduced Acts yesterday saying Luke, the beloved physician, a more scholarly person, more well-educated person, wrote Acts. And he also wrote Luke's gospel, and he wrote almost, if not, almost half the New Testament. And I love the book of Acts. It can be called the Acts of the Apostles, the Acts of the Holy Spirit. So Acts chapter 2, verses 1 through 13. When the day of Pentecost had come, they were all together in one place. So they're all in one place, they're all in unity. And the day of Pentecost. Pentecost was a major Jewish holiday. 50 days after Passover. 50 days after Passover. They're all together in one place. In verse 2, and suddenly there came from heaven a noise like a violent rushing wind, and it filled the whole house where they were sitting. So they're in a house. They were in the upper room in Acts chapter 1. I don't necessarily know if they're in the upper room now. We know that Peter's speech, which he's going to start here in just a moment, seems to be in somewhere in the temple courts. I'm not doing a lot of, I preached on these passages, but I'm not looking at my notes because I mean for these just to be brief. And if I pull out my notes, they'll get longer and longer and longer. So they're all together in one place in a house. They hear a violent rushing wind. So imagine this. Use your sanctified imagination. Imagine what this must be like. You know, you talk about tornadoes and they say it sounded like a freight train. I don't know if it was like that. I don't know. Last night it was kind of windy and I could hear the wind rushing around my house. They heard the sound of a mighty rushing wind, not just a rushing wind, a mighty rushing wind coming upon them. And it came upon the house where they were sitting. Luke even says they were sitting. And there appeared to them tongues as of fire distributing to themselves. And they rested on each one of them, verse 3. So the tongue, it was like they saw tongues as of fire coming down on each one of them. Now, this is very interesting. So sometimes we try to picture Pentecost. And there's even pictures, paintings, things like that. Pentecost as of these like fiery type tongues coming down on all the people. It may have looked like that. Luke is trying to describe the indescribable. How do you describe the indescribable? They did not have enough words in their vocabulary to describe what they experienced. It's like that in Revelation. In Revelation, we know that John, who wrote Revelation, stretched the Greek vocabulary. He stretched it. He's describing the indescribable. The indescribable. Luke is describing the indescribable. So he's using sounds like a mighty rushing wind, tongues as a fire. He's describing the indescribable as the Holy Spirit comes upon the church. Verse 4, and they were all filled with the Holy Spirit. They were all filled with the Holy Spirit. And they began to speak with other tongues as the Holy Spirit was giving them utterance. The Holy Spirit is spiritually gifting them, enabling them to speak in tongues they don't even know. Now, there were Jews living in Jerusalem, devout men from every nation under heaven. There's all these nations represented. I think it is just awesome and just amazing and just cool how God did this. Passover was a major, like the top major holy day for Judaism. And during Passover, the Jerusalem population would swell. It would swell like 10 times its normal population, near 1 million people, okay, depending on the different studies you read. And that's when Jesus was crucified, died, and was resurrected. And it had to happen at Passover because of Jewish prophecies in the Old Testament, because of different things that had to be fulfilled. And now, 50 days after Passover, Pentecost was another major Jewish holiday, which holiday comes from holy day. And once again at Pentecost, the Jerusalem population would swell. So Passover, Jesus' crucified, death, resurrected, all these people could witness it, all these people could hear about it, because all these extra people, they've all traveled into the city from their foreign area. Pentecost, the Holy Spirit comes upon the church, and all these people are in Jerusalem from their other nations when the Holy Spirit comes upon the church. And they hear Peter's message, which he begins. So, Luke says, all the nations under heaven. Now, verse 6. And when this sound occurred, the crowd came together and they were bewildered because each one of them was hearing and speaking his own language. They're thinking, I'm from this other country. Why am I hearing my own language? And they took notice. I went to the Dominican Republic on a mission trip, and when you land in the airport, and as soon as you go there, you realize, wow, they're speaking Spanish. I'm not hearing English. Now, but if I went there and I heard a bunch of people speaking my language, I would take note. And that's what these people are doing. They're hearing their own language and they're like, what's going on? So they take note. How are they speaking my language? The Holy Spirit gave them that ability to communicate the gospel. Okay? Verse 7 and following. They were amazed and astonished, saying, why are not all these who are speaking Galileans? And how is it that we each hear them in our own language to which we were born? Now it tells the countries, Parthians and Medes and Elamites and the residents of Mesopotamia, Judea and Cappadocia, Pontus and Asia, Phrygia and Pamphylia, Egypt, and the districts of Libya around Cyrene, and visitors from Rome, even Rome, both Jews and proselytes. By the way, this is kind of the outline of Acts. Paul will go to a lot of these places. The other apostles will go to a lot of these places and take the gospel with them. Libya, around Cyrene, and visitors from Rome, both Jews and proselytes, Cretans and Arabs. Verse 11. We hear them in our own tongues speaking of the mighty deeds of God. They heard them, and they're talking about the gospel. They're talking about the mighty deeds of God. And they all continued in amazement, in great perplexity, saying to one another, what does this mean? But others were mocking and saying, they are full of sweet wine. They thought they had strong wine, sweet wine, strong wine. They thought they were drunk. And Peter's going to preach, and we're going to get in that tomorrow. And as Peter preaches, he declares the gospel. And he says, we're not drunk. We've received the Holy Spirit, which Jesus had promised. I hope this is encouraging for you today. Lord bless you.